The arrival. The first encounter. Blood splattered on the walls as aliens cowered in fear, begging for mercy as the human soldiers stormed their city. Captain Xander Rook led the way, guns blazing. The human recon team had landed on Zephyrus to investigate a distress call, but the busy alien streets emptied in terror the moment the humans arrived. Strange, Xander thought. Why are they so afraid of us? An armed Krell warrior named Thon blocked their path, aiming a plasma rifle. Surrender, humans. Your kind brings only death. Xander stepped forward and stared him down. I challenge you to solo combat. Your best warrior against me. We'll see who's weak. Thon snarled but agreed. He had no choice. To refuse would be cowardice. Xander checked his sidearm minus 15 rounds. Better make them count, because if he lost this duel, the terrified aliens would swarm and slaughter his exposed human squad. This fight was now for their survival. The duel. Word of the duel spread through the city like wildfire. Crowds gathered in the streets, all heading towards the central arena to witness the spectacle. Thousands of alien eyes watched with anticipation as Xander and Thon entered from opposite sides of the battlefield. The human captain carried no firearm, instead wielding a high-tech energy sword. The blade hummed and crackled with barely contained power, a sleek, elegant weapon, the pinnacle of human engineering. In contrast, the Krell commander hefted a massive double-bladed battle axe, its cruel edges still stained with the blood of past victims. The axe looked heavy enough to cleave a man in two, but Thon spun it deftly with one hand, his muscles bulging. Scared little human. Thon growled as they squared off. You should be. I've slaughtered hundreds with this axe. Hundreds. Wow, you must be really old then. Xander quipped back with a smirk. Let's see if you can keep up, fossil. The battle begins. Thon roared and charged, bringing his axe down in a brutal overhead chop. But Xander was ready. He sidestepped nimbly, the axe whooshing past his head, and slashed his sword across Thon's ribs. The Krell's hide was tough, resisting the cut, but Xander drew first blood. And so the deadly dance began. Thon had the edge in raw strength, his axe swings shaking the ground with their power, but Xander was faster and more agile, ducking, rolling, and leaping acrobatically as he evaded the Krell's furious attacks. The human's energy blade flashed and sparked each time it clashed against the battle axe. Xander targeted the wooden handle, hoping to burn through it, but the dense alien hardwood resisted his slashes, turning the tide. Thon unleashed a flurry of chops and cuts, putting Xander on the defensive. The human gave ground, panting, sweat stinging his eyes. He could smell the Krell's rank breath. A cry rose from the alien spectators as Thon's axe sliced open Xander's sleeve, nearly taking his arm off. The human stumbled back, switching his sword to his offhand as crimson blood ran down his dominant arm. Thon pressed his advantage, bulling forward, but he had fallen for Xander's ruse. As the Krell reared back for a two-handed strike, Xander lunged inside his reach. The human's energy blade flashed out in a blinding arc and sheared clean through the handle of Thon's battle axe. The head of the massive weapon spun away and embedded itself in the sand. In the same instant, Xander leveled his humming blade at the Krell's throat. Surrender, Xander demanded coolly, his chest heaving. You've lost. Thon dropped to his knees, eyes wide in disbelief. All his life, he had been taught that the Krell were the galaxy's apex warriors, but this human, this primitive ape, had outclassed him completely. I yield, Thon growled, the words seeming to cause him physical pain. I acknowledge humanity's strength. Xander nodded and stepped back, deactivating his energy blade. The alien crowd watched in stunned awe as he extended a hand to help Thon rise. Even in victory, the human showed mercy. New allies. The alien city gates creaked open with a resounding groan. Xander led his team through the streets, past huddled groups of wide-eyed aliens who gawked and whispered as the humans passed. Fear still hung thick in the air, but now it was tinged with a grudging respect. A hooded figure stepped out from the shadows of an alleyway. Xander's hand flew to his sword hilt, but the figure raised its hands in a pleading gesture. "Peace, human. I mean you no harm. I am Axel Vero, leader of the resistance against the Zorro Empire." Xander sized up Vero. The alien rebel was tall and lean, with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "The distress signal we picked up, that was you?" Xander asked. Vero nodded grimly. "I apologize for the deception, but we had to be sure you were not agents of the Zorro. They have spies everywhere." Xander's brow furrowed. "What's your beef with these Zorro bastards? And what's this about a resistance?" The resistance revealed. "The Zorro are a scourge upon the galaxy," Vero spat bitterly. "They have enslaved and subjugated countless worlds, bent on forging their twisted vision of order through brutality and fear. We are but one of many rebel cells fighting to overthrow their tyrannical rule. But now the stakes are higher than ever." Vero trailed off, eyes haunted, then looked back at Xander. "The Zorro have developed a new weapon, Captain, one capable of shattering entire planets, of snuffing out billions of lives in an instant. They call it the World Breaker, and with it, they will grind the galaxy under their heel once and for all." A chill ran down Xander's spine. He had seen some serious things in his time, but this was next level. "Damn. All right, Vero, you have our attention. How do we stop these psychos?" "By hitting them where it hurts," Vero said fiercely. "The World Breaker is fueled by a rare crystal called Zorum. The Zorro have been strip mining entire systems to find enough of it. If we could destroy their Zorum stockpiles, their supply lines, we might just have a chance." Xander whistled, mind racing. Taking out strategic targets behind enemy lines to sabotage a superweapon. Now that was the kind of mission he could get behind. "I'm in," Xander decided. "But if we're going to pull this off, I need to report back to Earth Command first. Get some backup, heavy ordnance, the works. The Zorro won't know what hit him." Vero clasped Xander's hand, relief etched on his face. "Thank you, Captain. You have no idea what this means. With humanity on our side, we finally have a real shot." The infiltration. Ambush. A thunderous explosion rocked the ground, sending aliens screaming and running in all directions. Xander ripped his hand free and snatched up his rifle as a hail of plasma bolts tore up the street. A Zorro strike team was pouring into the square, all bristling armor and nasty-looking weapons. Ambush. Xander roared. "Circle up and take cover." The human soldiers snapped into action, diving behind rubble and returning fire. The rebels joined in, Vero barking orders as he blasted away with a scavenged plasma carbine. It was a brutal, chaotic melee, a close-quarters shootout at point-blank range. Then, a massive Zorro in jet-black armor strode through the chaos, plasma bolts pinging off his shields like raindrops. General Karax. Xander recognized the ugly mug anywhere. Karax was infamous for his cruelty, even among the Zorro. The general leveled his cannon at the nearest clump of rebels and humans and squeezed the trigger, vaporizing them in a wash of searing blue light. The battle with Karax. Xander snarled and sprinted straight at him, dodging and weaving as he closed the distance. "Hey!" Xander shouted. "Let's dance." And then he was on Karax, slamming the butt of his rifle into the general's faceplate with a sickening crack. The Zorro bellowed and lashed out, battering Xander's rifle aside and seizing him by the throat. Armored fingers squeezed, crushing the human's windpipe. But Xander hurled his legs upward, locking them around Karax's thick arm and wrenching with all his strength. Bones snapped, and the Zorro howled, grip loosening. Xander ripped free and hammered a roundhouse kick into Karax's knee, feeling it give way. The general toppled but rolled with it, coming up swinging. The conspiracy unveiled. The discovery. Xander wrenched his combat knife free and stabbed again and again until Karax lay still. Around them, the battle was turning. The Zorro wavered at the sight of their leader's fall, and the humans and rebels surged forward with renewed intensity, driving the enemy back. In minutes, the surviving Zorro were fleeing, dragging their wounded with them. Xander staggered upright, breathing hard. He was battered and bloodied but alive. Vero limped over, clutching a bleeding shoulder. Karax is dead. The rebel leader breathed in wonder. I can't believe it. You killed the butcher himself. Xander wiped his knife clean and sheathed it. Believe it. And he's just the first. We're taking this fight right to the Zorro's front door. He looked around at his surviving squadmates and new rebel allies. They were all exhausted and hurting, but there was a new fire in their eyes. We head to Earth, Xander told them. And then we show these Zorro bastards what humanity is really made of. The council meeting. Xander stormed into the United Earth Council chambers, his boots echoing on the polished marble floor. The murmur of voices fell silent as all eyes turned to the battle-hardened captain. He could feel the weight of their stares, a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Counselors, Xander began, his voice firm and resolute. I come bearing grave news. The Zorro Empire poses an imminent threat to our very existence. They have developed a weapon capable of annihilating entire worlds, and they will not hesitate to use it against us. He strode to the center of the room, activating a holographic display. Images of the World Breaker flickered to life, eliciting gasps of horror from the assembled counselors. Xander zoomed in on the schematics, highlighting the devastating potential of the Zorro-powered superweapon. This is what we're up against, Xander declared, his eyes blazing with intensity. The Zorro will not rest until they have brought the entire galaxy to its knees. We must act now before it's too late. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, counselors shouting over one another in a frenzy of debate. Some pounded their fists, demanding immediate military action, while others pleaded for caution and diplomacy. The rebel leader's warning. Captain Rook, a silver-haired counselor, interjected, his voice cutting through the din. Are you suggesting we plunge our species into an all-out war? Surely there must be a peaceful solution, a way to negotiate with the Zorro. Xander shook his head, frustration etched on his face. With all due respect, counselor, you can't negotiate with a species that sees conquest as their birthright. The Zorro will never compromise, never back down. They'll keep coming until we're all either dead or enslaved. As the debate raged on, a sudden commotion erupted at the back of the chambers. Guards shouted and weapons were drawn as a disheveled figure pushed his way through the crowd. It was Axel Vero, the rebel leader, his face bruised and bloodied. Captain Rook, Vero cried out, his voice hoarse with desperation. You must listen to me. The Zorro, they've infiltrated your government. They have agents at the highest levels working to undermine your efforts to resist them. A new revelation. Silence fell over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. Xander's eyes narrowed as he scanned the faces of the counselors, searching for any hint of guilt or deceit. He had always suspected that the Zorro's reach extended further than anyone realized, but to have it confirmed so dramatically was still a shock. Vero, Xander said, his voice low and urgent. Are you certain of this? The rebel leader nodded grimly. I have proof, Captain. Intercepted transmissions, financial records, and more. The Zorro have been manipulating your council for years, steering you away from any action that might threaten their plans. Xander's mind raced as he processed the implications of Vero's revelation. The United Earth Council, the very body tasked with protecting humanity, had been compromised by the enemy. He couldn't trust anyone, not even his own superiors. A new mission. In that moment, Xander made a decision. He would take matters into his own hands, assemble a team of loyal soldiers, and root out the Zorro infiltrators himself. It was a daunting task, one that would put him at odds with both the Council and the Zorro, but he had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Counselors, Xander announced, his voice ringing with authority. In light of this new information, I have no choice but to act independently. I will gather evidence of the Zorro's treachery and expose their agents within our ranks. I ask only that you do not stand in my way." With that, Sander turned on his heel and strode out of the chambers, Vero falling into step beside him. They had work to do, and time was running out. Gathering the team. As word of Sander's mission spread through the ranks of Earth's military, a small but fiercely loyal group of soldiers rallied to his cause. They were the best of the best, handpicked by Sander for their skills, courage, and unwavering dedication to humanity's survival. There was Lieutenant Nara Singh, a brilliant hacker and infiltration specialist who could breach any security system. Sergeant Michael Novak, a grizzled veteran of countless battles, his aim with a sniper rifle unmatched. And Dr. Lena Sensen, a xenobiologist whose knowledge of alien physiology and technology would be invaluable in unraveling the Zorro's secrets. Together, they formed the core of Sander's team, a covert unit operating in the shadows to expose the Zorro conspiracy. They worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of intel, tracking down leads, and interrogating suspects. Each new discovery painted a chilling picture of just how deeply the Zorro had embedded themselves in Earth's power structures. Facing the threat. But even as they made progress, the risk grew ever greater. Zorro assassins dogged their steps, determined to silence Sander and his team before they could reveal the truth. Firefights erupted in the streets of Earth's cities, and Sander found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, never knowing who he could trust. Through it all, the specter of the World Breaker loomed, a ticking clock counting down to galactic annihilation. Sander pushed his team harder, the urgency of their mission spurring them on through long nights and close calls. Finally, after weeks of tireless effort, the pieces began to fall into place. They had uncovered the identities of key Zorro infiltrators, high-ranking officials within Earth's government and military who had been manipulating humanity's response to the alien threat. The evidence against them was damning, ranging from clandestine meetings with Zorro agents to direct sabotage of Earth's defenses. A chilling realization. With the net closing in, Sander and his team prepared to present their findings to what remained of the United Earth Council. But even as they gathered their evidence and steeled themselves for the inevitable confrontation, a chilling realization settled over Sander. The Zorro's plan was even more insidious than he had imagined. The World Breaker, as terrifying as it was only the beginning. Through their agents and machinations, the Zorro had been subtly guiding humanity's development, shaping them into the perfect tool for their own ends. Earth's advanced technology, combined with the Zorro's brutal philosophy of conquest, would create an unstoppable force that would sweep across the galaxy like a plague. Humanity would become the instrument of its own destruction, a weapon wielded by the very enemy they sought to defeat. The battle for Zephyrus. Preparing for battle. The weight of this revelation hung heavy on Sander as he prepared to confront the Council. He knew that the road ahead would be long and bloody, that Earth would need every ounce of its strength, and resolved to stand against the coming darkness. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, Sander refused to despair. He had seen firsthand the courage and resilience of the human spirit, the unbreakable will that had carried his species through countless trials and tribulations. And so, as he stepped forward to address the Council, Sander's voice rang out like a clarion call, a rallying cry for all of humanity. "People of Earth," he began, his eyes blazing with determination. "The Zorro believe that they have already won, that our fate is sealed. But they underestimate the strength of the human spirit, the unbreakable bonds of unity and purpose that bind us together." He paused, letting his words sink in, watching as the faces of the counselors and the soldiers around him hardened with resolve. "We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We will stand together as one species, one people, and we will face this threat head-on. For the sake of our world, for the sake of the galaxy, we will fight, and we will prevail." A roar of approval swept through the chamber, a tidal wave of defiance and determination. Xander felt a fierce swell of pride as he locked eyes with his team, seeing in them the same unyielding spirit that had carried humanity through countless challenges before. They knew that the road ahead would be long and treacherous, that the Zorro would stop at nothing to crush their resistance. But they also knew that they had no choice but to fight, to stand against the darkness, and protect the light of civilization from being extinguished forever. The human and rebel fleet. Admiral Xander Rook stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Invictus, as the massed human fleet dropped out of hyperspace above planet Zephyrus. Hundreds of warships, from sleek frigates to massive dreadnoughts, formed up around the Invictus in a dazzling display of humanity's military might. Xander felt a swell of pride as he surveyed the Armada. They were united now, the full strength of Earth marshaled to face the Zorro threat. On the view screen, rebel ships moved to join the human fleet, their alien designs a stark contrast to the angular human vessels. Xander nodded in satisfaction. The alliance was holding strong. His executive officer, Commander Nara Singh, spoke up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a hail from the rebel flagship. It's Varro." "Put him through," Xander ordered. Axel Varro's face flickered to life on the main display, the rebel leader looking haggard but determined. "Admiral Rook," Varro said, inclining his head. "Thank you for coming. Your presence here gives us hope." "The plan." Xander crossed his arms. "We're not just here for show, Varro. Earth is committed to this fight. The Zorro have to be stopped." "Agreed," Varro said grimly. "My spies report that the enemy's planet killer weapon is nearing completion in a heavily guarded space station on the far side of the Zephyrus system. We cannot allow them to unleash that monstrosity." Xander frowned thoughtfully. A frontal assault on a fortified Zorro station would be costly. They had to neutralize that weapon before it could be used, but throwing ships and lives at it recklessly would only weaken them for the larger battle ahead. An idea began to take shape in his mind. A dangerous plan, but audacious enough that it might just work. "A direct attack won't do it," Xander said slowly. "We need to take that weapon out from the inside. A small team infiltrating the station to sabotage it before it can be activated." Varro's eyes widened. "That's incredibly risky. The station will be crawling with their best troops and defenses." Xander nodded. "I know. That's why I'll lead the mission myself. I need a team of the best the rebels have to offer. People you trust absolutely." Varro blew out a breath. "I can think of a few who might fit that description. When do we leave?" "Immediately," Xander said. "Every minute that weapon is operational is a minute too long. Prep your people and dock with the Invictus. We'll drop you and a squad of my best special forces in a stealth shuttle and get you as close as we can." Varro nodded sharply. "Understood, Admiral. And thank you. I know the risk you're taking." Xander met his eyes. "We're in this together, Varro, humans, and rebels alike. Let's go remind the Zorro of that." The infiltration into the heart of darkness. The rebel ship soon docked with the Invictus, and Xander made his way down to the main hangar deck to greet Varro and his team. A strange feeling of déjà vu washed over the Admiral as he saw the eclectic mix of aliens standing beside the rebel leader, remembering another time not so long ago when fear and suspicion had divided them. But things were different now. They were comrades, brothers and sisters in arms against a common foe. Varro stepped forward and clasped Xander's hand. Up close, the rebel leader looked even more battered, his clothing singed and torn, but there was a fire in his eyes. "My people are ready, Admiral Rook. We will not fail you." Xander squeezed his hand and nodded to his own team of human commandos, kitted out in dark, unmarked combat armor. "Nor will we fail you. Let's get this done." They filed into the waiting stealth shuttle, a sleek, matte black vessel designed for infiltration missions. Xander took the controls himself, guiding the shuttle out of the Invictus hangar and into the void. Behind them, the massed fleets began to move, the ponderous capital ships taking up positions to screen the smaller rebel vessels, frigates and fighter wings setting up pickets and patrols. They all knew that the attack on the Zorro station was only the opening move. The enemy's main fleet could arrive at any moment, and they had to be ready. The infiltration begins. As the stealth shuttle rocketed towards its target, Xander felt the weight of command settle heavily on his shoulders. So many lives were depending on the success of this mission. If they failed, if that weapon was unleashed, he pushed the dark thoughts aside. Failure was not an option. He glanced back at his strike team, humans and rebels united by grim determination. They were the best of the best, each one a battle-hardened veteran. They would get the job done, no matter the cost. The shuttle shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, the twisted black spires of the Zorro station looming in the viewports. It was a monstrous construct, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays, its surface pockmarked by jagged craters and scars, a fitting lair for an empire that gloried in violence and conquest. "Beginning approach," Xander said tightly, hands flying over the controls. "Stealth systems engage. With luck, their sensors won't pick us up until we're right on top of them." The shuttle angled towards the station's underbelly, seeking one of the maintenance airlocks the rebel spies had identified. Tense minutes ticked by as they drifted closer, the hull creaking softly as the stress of the maneuver took its toll. Xander allowed himself a tight smile as the airlock loomed before them, its doors sealed and still. "We're in," he whispered into the taut silence. "Docking now." With a soft clang, the shuttle latched onto the airlock, magnetic clamps locking it into place. Xander and Vero were the first ones out, weapons raised as they scanned the dimly lit maintenance corridor beyond. One by one, the rest of the strike team emerged, moving with the silent efficiency of those long accustomed to covert operations.